All right, welcome into State of the Nation. Today is January 5th, I believe. Yes, it is January 5th, and that means we are just 8 days away from NHL hockey, joined by Nation Dan, Bagged Milk, as well as we do every Tuesday. We will give you 30 minutes of live hockey talk here on State of the Nation. Nation Dan, 8 days away from hockey. My favorite part about this, it feels like life is getting back to normal a little because we're spending our days debating Oilers line combos at training camp.
Yeah, it's that silly season, right, where Tyler Ennis was on Nugent Hopkins and Leon Draisaitl's line. What does that mean? Like, it's just, we're into that fun part where actual news is happening. You got the Cahoon and Neil unfit to play news and just all kinds of different little tidbits that we're getting here and there. And it's all fun and able to be able to talk about real hockey for one.
I have double-checked all of the audio. We are going without any technical glitches. Mr. Bagged Milk, your boy Nuge is back on the ice. Training camp, first couple days. Do you have any takeaways from it, or are you just happy to see the boys on the ice together?
Right now, I don't have too many takeaways outside of just being generally excited that we're this close to an actual NHL season happening. I feel like the fact that we went through two separate off seasons in a calendar year was trying, it was taxing, and it was hard to keep things going, and it was tough to maintain excitement as a hockey fan, but I'm excited. It's fun, even just like you said, yesterday on Real Life, we were arguing about line combinations in fucking training camp, and that's a beautiful place to be. I cannot wait until we're arguing about the power play, about the penalty kill, about line combos, about who's playing with Connor, who's not playing with Connor. All of it is exciting. Right now, it doesn't mean anything, but just being able to do it is making me very happy.
Well, and to that too, like seeing a guy like Jesse Puljujarvi, where we haven't seen him on the ice for. Were you going to say that too, Tyler? Yeah,
I was going to say that tweets about Jesse Puljujarvi working on his strength are sending Oilers Nation into like a firm 8, as Wanye would say.
Well, it's exciting to see a kid that a lot of people had written off as being, just done with the Oilers, and understandably so to a certain point. But to be able to see him on the ice, to be able to see his size on the ice, it's exciting. It's all just exciting times, and we are ready to hop on that roller coaster that we're going to be on for the next 4 months.
Speaking of exciting, Jay Downton is in the chat of our Twitch stream today. If, as always, anyone listening, if you got any questions, throw them into the chat. We got 14 viewers. Hello, Danger Suede's in there as well. Jay Downton in the chat. Jay, I'm just going to send this out there right now. If you ever want to actually join the stream, I'm only a text and a Zoom link away from making that happen. But yeah, I mean, I'd say the big story coming out of training camp, and that's where we're going to start today, as you can see on today's topics, the Oilers' top 6. The way that's laid out right now is kind of what has a lot of people talking. Did I point the wrong way?
I don't know.
I have no clue.
I can't see that screen.
The way that's the one thing a lot of people are talking about right now is the fact Draisaitl's with Yamamoto, Nuge is with McDavid, and Dave Tippett isn't going back to that, if you want to call it the first line, second line, whatever. He's not going back to Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Nugent Hopkins after it worked so well. Bag Milk, you gave your take yesterday on Real Life, but we'll rehash this a little bit here today. You're in the camp that it's the wrong call. That trio should have stuck together.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that's legitimately frustrating for me right now is that Dave Tippett decided during the play-in round in August that he wasn't going to reunite the best line in hockey after the calendar flipped to January of 2020. He didn't reunite the best line in hockey until the very end of the third period in the elimination game against Chicago. And he's not doing it again in training camp right now. I don't understand it. I get wanting to spread out the offense a little bit throughout the lineup and give Connor a player like Nuge to play with. You don't got to tell me how much Nuge means to the team. I love the kid. I'm the president and CEO of the fan club. However, I just don't understand his stubbornness in wanting to separate that line. They were so good together, so good that I guess I don't get it. And obviously it's training camp. Things can change very quickly. We know that the blender comes out quickly with Tippett at times, but I got to say, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it there, Bag Milk. I think that I believe, at least in my heart of hearts, that this is just more of a what you have with Nugent Hopkins, Leon, and Yamamoto. So why not try other combinations to see if you can spark something there as well? It's training camp. It's early days. We have guys that aren't fit to play right now. They're probably going to want to test Cahoon on every line to see where he works out. So I hope and I believe that Tippett can learn from his mistake in the playing around. And I think he would admit I hope that he would admit that was a mistake to make that move away from that. But yeah, it's definitely concerning, but hopefully it's just early days of training camp and we're just seeing the waxing kind of polish coming off here.
Yeah, it's interesting when you bring up the playing round, and I actually think Lowtide today, when I was chatting with him, he had a good counterpoint to that, and it wasn't the line combinations that cost them that series against Chicago. It was goaltending and playing the defensive zone. So what you could be doing here by putting McDavid back with Nugent Hopkins and maybe putting a bit of a more defensively finding another defensively responsible forward to put on that Draisaitl line, maybe you're actually solving the issue that there was in the playing round, because if you can keep more pucks out of your net, a puck kept out of your net worth just as much as a puck put in the other team's net is how some people would look at that. So I'm not as against it as I was maybe a week ago. I still would like to see that trio back together at some point, and I suspect that we will. We're getting no training camp. We're getting no exhibition games. We're being thrown right into a shortened season. Like, if they start off, knock on wood, 0-2, 0-3, then I think you'll absolutely see that line put back together. And if it works, it won't get put back together and we won't complain.
Well, that's the issue for me too with the play-in round. You're absolutely right. It wasn't the reason that we lost the play-in round, but the fact is he didn't go back to it at any point. There was never a point in that series where Tippett said, you know what, enough is enough. We got to go with what we know and be able to have that offense and have it work for us. So yeah, I agree that with what you said and what Lowtide said, that that's not the only reason we lost, but the fact that he didn't hit that release valve when they were down in the series multiple times, that's the concerning part for us.
Yeah, like when they finally got put back together, it was 7 minutes to go, I think, in the elimination game, and they were bounced right after. But that 7 minutes was probably the best hockey they played in the bubble. So I think that's a really, really good point. Before we move on to some other topics here, I'm in the chat right now. Marps911, who's the dark horse for the top 6 contributor by the midway point of the season, follows up and says, I'm thinking Haas could somehow end up on McDavid's wing and go off. That is a hot take and a half to say Gaetan Haas could end up in the Oilers on McDavid's wing. He's fast. I agree. That's what Jay added as well in the chat. I'm not thinking Haas, but Jay threw Puljujarvi in there. That's the guy I'm looking at and going, natural talent, very high ceiling. And if he plays well on that third line and the lines get jumbled up at some point, he could very well find himself contributing in the top 6 sooner rather than later.
I'm going to go, my bet is going to be, I'm going to bet that eventually the lines will be flipped a little bit. Nuge will be back with Draisaitl and Yamamoto, and Cahoon will be up there with Connor and Leon. I was watching Cahoon highlights the other day. The guy's got some hands, he's got some touch, and I think that he's the kind of player that could moonlight up there. But I don't mind the idea of, like, listen, everybody's excited about Jesse Puljujarvi. I just retweeted a bunch of quotes from Gregor from training camp today where he's just excited. He's talking to the guys. It seems like his English is better. I would love the idea of him coming in and stealing a spot. I just don't know if it's going to happen necessarily right away, but I hope so.
One of the, both good picks by you guys. I think that one of the things, and it's weird for me to say that he would be the dark horse, but for me, it's going to be Zach Kassian. I think that that's a guy that you need to have him hitting at all cylinders, and I mean hitting in the literal sense. And if he's up on that top line and he's able to, go back to the place where he was before he signed the contract and before he found himself in Dave Tippett's doghouse, I think that that's a guy that you can count on to be able to do what he's done before already. And that is a dark horse in the sense that it fell off last year and they weren't really finding anything that could gel with McDavid, through the final months of the season and then into the playoffs. So yeah, I would say Kassian, but I mean, those are all good picks. They're all good options. And again, we keep talking about it, but it's the depth that Ken Holland has brought in this season that allows us to be excited about different options that have all had the opportunity or have the promise to do so. And it's not just a reclamation product in Ty Ratty or like Devon Shore is, we're hoping he can slot up on that wing. So it's just, we keep coming back to it, but it's amazing work what Uncle Ken has done this year.
I would say that of anybody on the roster in terms of forwards, I would say Zach Kassian is probably one of the guys with the most pressure on him to actually do something. And that's weird to say considering he just signed a fresh contract extension. But like, if he's not playing with Connor, he has been historically useless. And I know that's a little harsh to say, but it's true. And the fact that he has the spot right now, at least beside Connor in pencil, he better seize that opportunity. Otherwise, he's going to find himself tumbling down the lineup in a hurry.
Yeah, and there are a handful of guys who I think have a bit of pressure, but I would agree with you in putting Kassian at the top of that list from an Oilers perspective. I think Tyson Barrie probably belongs in that conversation, but that's more of personal pressure for him. Like, if he's not producing on the power play, the Oilers are just going to replace him with, if Bouchard's in the lineup at that point, he'll do it. Ethan Bear could probably handle those minutes as well. If Barrie's has a bad year this year, that's a big hit for his NHL career. So I think Barrie has a lot of personal pressure on him. I agree, Kassian. Yamamoto's an interesting one as well, because we're all right now we're just all sort of assuming he's going to be the top 6 winger he was for half a season last year. To steal another line from Low Tide, 2 mentions for LT in the show. Development's not always a straight line. He loves bringing that up. There's, peaks and valleys in this thing. So I think we should be cautiously optimistic about Yamamoto, because what he did last year could probably be his ceiling, right?
Well, I wouldn't say grave concerns would be appropriate, but I do have concerns that people are just, like you said, they're expecting Yamamoto to just hit the ground running as he did last year. And I don't necessarily know if that's either fair or realistic for a guy entering what would be his first full NHL season. I don't necessarily think it's fair to expect him to just come in and walk through the NHL like it's an easy league. Yes, he gets to play with some skilled guys, and that's definitely going to help, but it's still going to be up to him to make sure he executes. And his name is going to be circled on boards probably more so than it was last year. He was a difference maker, and teams are going to notice that, and they're going to pick up on it. And especially when you consider that their Oilers are going to be playing the same teams over and over and over again, teams are going to make adjustments. So there's going to be pressure on Yamo to produce, as well as finding ways to contribute even when he's not chipping offensively.
But for Yamamoto, the nickname of the Honey Badger is so appropriate, because he is one of those guys that does get fired up when the game gets rough and tough. And, yes, he's not a guy to throw fists or anything at this point.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Wouldn't you, Dan? Wouldn't you love to see that? Hockey fights throwing some fists?
It'd be a good time to see that. But he is a guy that will go into the corner and muck it up with guys way bigger than he is. And then he's coming out of the corner with the puck and able to do some skill stuff with it. I think of his taunting of Dave Rittich in the Battle of Alberta there. So I think that there is that element of it. But the nice thing, again, and going back to the depth conversation, is that, maybe not so much with the right side of our offense, but we do have options that could slide up into that spot. If he does falter, he can go find his game, whether it's with the taxi squad or, in the lower end of the offense. Obviously, you don't want to necessarily have him on your fourth line, but maybe he slides in there with Turris, where Puljujärvi slides up into his spot. So there's options there, and it's nice to have that versatility for a kid like Yamamoto, where in the past we would be hinging all of our hopes on a Jordan Eberle or a Taylor Hall, and if they faltered, if they showed signs of that development curve not going straight up in a line, it's nice to have the ability to swap him out if you need to.
The thing with Yamamoto that leaves me feeling optimistic, and you touched on it a little bit, Dan, with the Honey Badger nickname, the things that he does really well and that made him so effective last year, they're effort-based, right? It's going into the corners, forcing turnovers. It's not like he went on some insane goal-scoring heater, and now we're sitting here going, he better get us 25, 30 goals this year. Like, if he's just continuing to be sort of a menacing presence on the forecheck, getting pucks to Leon Draisaitl, he'll do his job well. So maybe the point production won't be there, and I think that's where we need to be a little bit more cautious in our expectations of him. Like, I don't think he's putting up 56 points this year in 56 games, but in terms of just being effective, there's a part of me that wants to be optimistic and say he can continue to get it done, because he should be motivated heading into this season. There's an interesting debate right now going on between Edmonton 05 and Young Angus in the chat. And it started with, I believe it was Edmonton 05, throwing out, if the Oilers are in a good spot by the deadline, do you think you go after Kemper or another goalie? If you're saying Kemper and another goalie in the same breath, I'm assuming you mean Kemper or another big name. And the reason I'll say that's unlikely is because if this season is going well and the Oilers are in a position to buy at the deadline, it probably means Mikko Koskinen and or Mike Smith are playing pretty good, right? So if you're in a spot where you can load up at the deadline, I could maybe see you going and getting a better backup because it's Koskinen that's playing well and Smith's not. But I really can't see them going and spending, a first and a prospect on a guy like Darcy Kemper at the deadline, because if you haven't solved your goaltending by the deadline, you're probably not buying.
I wonder if that stems from, I know Mark Spector over at Sportsnet wrote about the idea of maybe the Oilers going for a different goaltender, provided that Mike Smith isn't able to handle the backup minutes. But I don't know. It's weird to think about trading for a goaltender when they had so many goaltenders available in the offseason. I guess it boggles the mind a little bit.
Well, and in this truncated season, you've got Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith. Like Tyler said, if both of those guys are firing on all cylinders, we're in the top two positions of the division,
or at the very least top four.
Yeah,
one of those guys, exactly. And if one of those guys has faltered, we're probably talking about having to make a goaltending move because it's become the trade deadline, and we're sitting with one goalie that's worth starting every night. So you need a backup there. Yeah, I think that's kind of the where does the season kind of work itself out, and are both goalies going to be able to handle this workload? Is Anton Forsberg going to be called on more than he should be? There's a bunch of question marks going into the season.
Just going to the chat right now, Avery asked, did I miss any uproar over each division having a sponsor? And that's where I want to go next year. We talked a lot of Oilers off the top, but that's been a big story today. My take, I don't care. And we talked about helmet ads on both of the podcasts a lot over the last couple of weeks, even jersey ads. I don't really care because it's a business that needs to survive. And at the end of the day, I'm not even calling it the North Division, never mind the Scotia North Division. I'm calling it the Canadian Division. And the other ones, I haven't even memorized them. I think they're East, West, and it's either South or Metro. I don't know. Either way, I'm not calling them by their sponsor names, so it doesn't change anything for me. The only time you're ever going to see this is probably during the broadcast, when they'll have to say it's a big matchup in the Scotia North Division. That's it. And what's the difference between that and a normal commercial, or if they said tonight's big game is brought to you by Scotiabank? The people getting mad about this, it's pointless. Sell everything. I don't give a shit.
I'm with you. I tweeted yesterday, for the record, I do not care about helmet ads. And some people were pretty upset about them. And the funny thing to me is when you're watching the game, you're not going to be able to see them unless there's some kind of close up on a player at a face-off circle or from one of the corner cameras or something like that. But you mentioned it also yesterday on Real Life. I don't care about board ads. I don't care about ads on the ice. It's the thing that I think is going to be bothersome for a lot of people is not that necessarily that they're doing the ads this year. It's if they actually expect them to go away next year. Because I doubt they do.
It's not happening. They're there for sure.
The can of worms is open.
For me, just whatever. It's whatever. It's so what? Like you said, the NHL is struggling for money. It's a very gate-driven business right now. They need to find a way to make some cash. And if it's selling a tiny little logo on the side of a helmet that would have normally replaced an Oilers logo, which in itself is an advertisement, then whatever.
Life is one advertisement.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, we scroll through Instagram, you get an ad post every 3 posts. You scroll through Twitter and there's people promoting whatever, because that's just the way the world is right now. I remember back in the day going to junior hockey games and being like, holy, there's ads everywhere on the ice. And that's because they had to make money and they had a way to do it. And so it's a slow rollout. If you look at it over the stretch of time, hockey has been the slowest to come along with a lot of the advertisement stuff. And that's because we have a lot of purists in this sport and as fans of the sport. But It's hard for me to sit here, and I think what's happened is that people haven't had hockey to watch for a while, and so they forget that there's ads on the glass that are superimposed in the broadcast. There's ads on the ice that are superimposed in the broadcast. Like, there's all these things that you just don't see, you haven't seen for a while, and so you're not used to it. But at the end of the day, it's not violating anything. You can't see that Rogers sticker unless they're zoomed in on an Oilers player. That's the only time you're going to see it anyways. So if Rogers thinks they're getting value out of that, all the power to them. Pay all the money you want. Make the league have more money available to them to be able to up the development and up the quality of the productions. Like, exactly. It's just it's a part of life. It's a part of life now, and we need to learn to accept it and not let it take away from the game. There's a lot more things to worry about, like that offside rule for the state of the game, and the offside reviews for the state of the game. It's just,
By the way, how bad was that no goal call in the Canada game against Russia? Like, Canada was dominating that game, and then Russia had that one goal taken away. It might have been making things more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
How bad was that call?
When they scored that goal, I was watching the game with my girlfriend. I turned to her. I said, this game's going to get wild now, because it was 4-1 heading into a third period where crazy shit always happens between these two teams. And that disallowed goal just totally took the wind out of the sails of the Russians. And here's where I come out on that. I hate it, but I don't know how to fix it. Because I think if you take away offside, again, it's sort of like the advertisements where you gave it to hockey fans, and now I don't think you're taking it away. Because if you start not reviewing offsides, that stuff's going to get dissected, and it's going to be a story for the next however many years of, if they didn't change that damn rule that screwed the Oilers, we could have called it an offside, it would have counted, right? Like, you're screwed either way.
Here's my analogy. It's sport games. It's sports games. So for the longest time, when they had video review in sports, everybody was clamoring for it in their games. They wanted that fun. And the game developers were like, listen, the minute we include that in our game, we're also showing that there's mistakes being made in a digital version of the sport. And people, they include it now, and you can't remove it. You can't remove it from the game. But literally what it has included in the sports game is an outside thing, which is a ruling that you have to try and be watching for and hoping for. It's such a weird thing for us to now have to think about, not being able to review offsides and have a blatant offside where it's like, if we had video review, we'd be able to fix this. But you've opened Pandora's box. We got what we wished for when it comes to a bunch of video reviews and a bunch of issues around, the puck being across the line and all that. Now we have 17,000 camera angles that can show us, the angle of the puck and where it went over the line. So it's like I said, you've opened Pandora's box. We've caused this issue for ourselves, and that's where it's at now.
The funny thing to me is that this all started because of that fucking Matt Duchene goal how many years ago where he was like 4 feet offside. It's just so annoying that a call like that was so blatantly obvious led to just the concept, the idea of the rule itself is fine to me. Yep. You want to get the call right, but at the same point, I also think you should allow some freedom for the linesman to make the call that they're supposed to make. Like that, going back to that no goal against Russia last night, it's just, that was so minor and so inconsequential to how the goal actually went in that it's annoying to me.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people go, well, put a clock on it, because Russia scored, I think, like 20 seconds after they entered the zone. They go, well, put a 15-second clock on it, and if they score it, but then you're adding another wrinkle into the review of what happens when a goal is scored 15.2 seconds after they enter the zone, and now you have to allow it, even though it was blatantly, like, you screwed yourself in a way.
And
you have to allow these.
Open. We made a mess of it. It's, technology came into the sport, and it's only going to get worse from here. We're going to have sensors inside pucks soon that can tell if a puck.
I actually think that'll help.
But then it'll be that there was a sensor that was broken in the left side of the puck, and it thought it was over the line. Like, it's going to be nonsense, and it's not isolated to just hockey. It's every sport. It's every video review issue. You just continue to call into question the people that are designed. That like referees are trained to make the calls as humans. They understand the rule book. They try to make the calls as best they can. Matt Duchene, 4 feet across the line, they made that miss, so we fixed it. Well, now technology is making the answers for us.
Yeah, You're bang on with that. We only got about 4 minutes left in today's stream. Shout out to everyone who's been really active in the chat, specifically Avery, who is talking a lot in the chat. Love it, Avery. Avery, we're not going to dig into should they get rid of offsides today. That's a whole nother debate. But I do want to spend the last few minutes talking about the World Juniors. Dylan Holloway, Team Canada, going for gold tonight. This version of Team Canada is probably the most dominant I've ever seen in my time covering it, which is 5-6 years here. But I mean, aside from that 03 team, or sorry, the lockout team in 05-06, this team, man, like they haven't given up an even strength goal. They've never trailed. They haven't lost a game or won a game by less than 2 goals. Like it's ridiculous how good they are.
And not to mention the Hockey Canada 50-50 as we record this at 1:26 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon is already at $5 million bucks. But the interesting thing to me, Tyler, is like you said, how well they're rolling, and they really are. Like that game against Finland, dominant. Russia had no chance. But speaking of which, what was with Askarov not being able to hold on to his stick? I was thinking about starting a drinking game every time he dropped his stick that we would drink, but I didn't want half the people that follow Oilers Nation to end up in the hospital. But to me, I thought Canada actually wasn't playing all that well early in the tournament. Yes, they were winning, but maybe it's because they had lesser competition and it wasn't nearly as the sense of urgency wasn't there or something. But I just thought as it's gone on, they've gotten so much better, so much tighter. And they just look like this, by all accounts, is their tournament to lose, in my opinion.
Dangerous Wade asks, honest question, are they really this good or is everyone else having a bad year? I think early in the tournament with the COVID stuff in Germany, that would have been interesting, but like that Russian team is solid, man, with Podkolzin and Amirov and obviously Askarov between the pipes. This Canada team has like 19 first rounders on it? Like it's insane how deep they are.
Although it was interesting to hear that Russia, this is one of the youngest World Juniors team that Russia has iced in a while.
I think that there's certain elements, like I think you look at Germany and the Swedens of the world where COVID it just threw off their whole rhythm to start the tournament. To be fair to Canada as well, it did throw their rhythm off as well. It's hard for me to say that this is the most dominant team because we did watch, 5 years in a row of them just absolutely breezing to the championship.
I also remember, what was that, the 2005 World Juniors team, which was just unstoppable. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's been some great teams. I think you'll look back on this one and it'll be up there for sure. But yeah, it's a weird tournament. There's a lot of stuff where you just have to kind of put an asterisk on it and say, like, if there was a crowd there, is that more pressure or less pressure for the team? Like there's all kinds of stuff that, we're going to look back on and asterisk it, whether it's a good or a bad thing, who knows? But yeah, it's been fun to watch. That's the main thing, right? And it's been exciting hockey for us. It gets us that little taste of the spirit and the emotion that we're going to have for the next 4 months. And yeah, go Canada, go.
Bag Milk, can I get a score prediction? In my article today, which is up right now, OilersNation.com, I said 5-3 Canada. They are going to beat the U.S., and as James Duthie put it yesterday on the broadcast, it will be a double in the bubble. Back-to-back golds for Canada. So 5-3 is mine. What's yours?
I'm going to go, I like 4-2 in an empty netter.
Okay. Nation Dad.
Well, I've been doing it this whole tournament, and I'm going to do it again. 3-1 is my score. It works for us so far, so why not keep going with it? 3-1 final. Canada wins the gold.
At this point, it's hard to imagine Devin Levi allowing a goal against this late in the tournament, considering how well he's played, which again has been one of the best stories in the tournament. Like it was I think Bob McKenzie called it a David versus Goliath matchup for him and Askarov. The first round pick, the guy who's the Russian Carey Price and all this against the kid who wasn't invited to the virtual summer camp and is coming out of junior A and was kind of an afterthought, a 7th round pick of the Panthers. What he's done has been unbelievable. It should be a great game tonight. Don't forget, check out that 50-50 for our friends at Hockey Canada as well. Nation Dad, Bag Milk, thanks for hopping on for 30 minutes. Shout out to everyone who was active in the chat and joined us this week on Twitch as well. We will be back next Tuesday for another 30 minutes of Hockey Talk. See you, boys.
Peace and love.
Yes.